Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk ETC. I have an interesting guest with me today. I have Andrei Polgar. He's an economist, entrepreneur, cryptocurrency investor, and he has a great YouTube channel that I encourage you all to check out. It's called 1 Minute Economics. He has lots of interesting, well-done videos on lots of topics related to economics, and they're very short and succinct with really nice graphics. So I thought it was a great way to introduce various topics in an accessible way. So definitely welcome, Andrei.
Thank you very much for having me. Great to be on.
Yeah, so I already gave you a little introduction, but why don't you kind of flush things out? Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about your background, how you came to be an economist, how you came to do your YouTube channel, whatever you want to add.
Yeah, well, I basically decided to do this economics thing as a labor of love, because coming from Romania, I didn't exactly have the luxury of, failing, especially early on in life. So I started out as an entrepreneur, started a bunch of projects. Things went very well, especially as for someone my age at that point. One thing led to another. Unfortunately, my mom got sick, ended up losing all of my money that I've earned through my various projects because,
wow.
Yeah, but I mean, I decided to take her to get kind of like the best treatment we had here in Europe. And of course, it was not in Romania. It had to be somewhere abroad. And fortunately, she's fine now. It's all great. But I was forced to start over. I got accepted at university at that point, but ended up not going. So actually, I took 2 years off to kind of work on getting my businesses back together, becoming a better online entrepreneur, and actually only started the university route again from bachelor's degree to PhD after I was financially secure enough to do so. So basically, at that point, when I started studying economics at the academic level, I did so because it was a hobby, not because I wanted to make money off it, because I was doing okay financially. And basically, I said, look, this is the dimension of my life that gives me the most fulfillment. I have another dimension that brings home the bacon, basically, like my various projects, the investments I make and stuff like that. And I thought that kind of like, together they're a decent enough combination. One thing led to another, and here we are.
Okay, yeah, so that's great. See, I'm an academic who wishes he knew about business. But so the fact that you are successful in business and decided to do academics on top of that, that's extra impressive. So and so you economics was a passion, and you were doing your businesses in addition to studying economics, and then you and how did you get to doing your YouTube channel? What happened there?
It's so strange that it started out as nothing more than an experiment, because I'm a dude from Romania. Nobody would have thought that I'd end up spending so much time recording myself talking, publishing videos on YouTube and so on. It's just crazy, But it started out as me just saying, look, I think economics is taught pretty poorly all around. So why don't I make a video once every 2 months or something like that, and we'll see what happens. Well, fortunately, people responded well to my content. They were like, hey, why don't you make a video about this? Why don't you make a video about that? And I did. Okay. And yeah, here we are today in 2018, and I look back and I look at my basic playlist where I just list. I have many playlists. I have category specific ones like personal finance playlists, economic history playlist, and so on. But if I look at just my basic playlist, it gives me goosebumps because it's the playlist where I list all of my animations, and there are 150 or so of them right now, and just that ridiculously basic playlist has 200,000 views or whatever. just that playlist, right, which is just crazy. So essentially, it started out as a hobby and continued to what it is today because, frankly, it worked.
Right.
That's pretty much why.
Right. So I've been dying to ask you this. So these shows are recorded and they don't have visual. Sometimes we have video, but it's enough effort just to get the audio of the show. But your recording, your videos had graphics, so I can't imagine the extra effort it takes to do all those graphics. Can you talk about how that goes? That seems just like a lot of work.
Oh yeah, well, it's a team effort. It's a team effort for sure. Because at the beginning, I was kind of shy about doing the voiceovers myself, since my English tends, it's not perfect. So at the very beginning, I hired someone to do the voiceover. I wrote the scripts and the artistic suggestions, very detailed stuff, like I need 1 tree here, a house next to it, and then 3 people who do this and that, So I took care of the script and artistic suggestions. Then I had a voiceover guy who recorded the voiceover, and finally an animator who does the animations. At this point, I do the voiceovers myself, I do the scripts and everything else myself, and I work with 3 animators, with my main animator being a very nice lady from Las Vegas, with whom I work really, really well. But it's a team effort for sure. It's
okay. Okay, good. All right. So the topic for today's show was how cryptocurrencies could help alleviate poverty, to help the world's poor. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. So I know you've done some shows on various cryptocurrency topics, and I would encourage people to look at Andrei's channel and see those. But why don't, for the benefit of the audience, why don't you share your general thoughts to get us started on how cryptocurrencies could help alleviate poverty?
As someone who was born, raised, and lives in Romania, I've accumulated a lot of frustrations about, the stuff people from, let's say, Western countries don't understand, because if you live in a Western country like, the United States, Germany, or whatever, you tend to take certain things for granted, like the fact that companies are willing to do business with you. But I remember when I was starting out, like it was a huge problem that PayPal did not accept Romania. So essentially, you had a lot of bright people here in Romania who acquired skills, be they web design, programming, or whatever, and they had a very hard time getting paid for their work because the middleman, PayPal, said, yeah, we won't do business with you. And I keep telling people that one of the most important advantages of crypto is the fact that there's nobody there to ban you. Like, if you live in, I don't know, Iran or Pakistan and just want to earn a living designing websites, it's not your fault that nobody wants to do business with your country. You just happened to be born there. You didn't choose to be born there, right? And I truly do believe that people have a right to do something with their life. And by having, cryptocurrencies, you essentially have this medium of exchange that allows you to do business with people all over the world. The CEO of Bitcoin is never going to knock on your door and say, for your protection, we're going to close down your account. Nobody's going to do that.
For your protection, yeah.
For your protection, of course. there's just so much value in this. And people get so caught up in the idea of, oh, we're in crypto to get filthy rich, or we are in it to generate humongous returns, and let's invest in this, let's invest in that. And that's perfectly fine. But I believe people have made the mistake of losing sight of the core fundamentals. What makes crypto special? It's all about freedom. It's all about having this thing that nobody can take away from you, having this medium that, again, talking about poor countries, let's talk about Syria, for example, and assume that you were, let's say, an engineer who lived in Syria and were forced to leave the country. Now, even in a worst case scenario for, let's say, Bitcoin, if you invested in Bitcoin when it was 20,000 and you were forced to leave the country and with your Bitcoin and start a new life now, just think about it. What did you have if you were an engineer living in Syria? You had maybe your home, which represented a huge percentage of your net worth. You had maybe a house, and let's say you had the crypto you bought at 20,000. Well, even with your timing being, the worst possible in our example, if you're forced to leave the country, then the value of your real estate essentially goes to zero because you have to leave it behind. You're most likely not going to be able to take your car with you either. And the Bitcoin you bought at the very highs, even with prices at these depressed levels, might just be enough to help your family start a new life. And I believe that if people try to see the value of crypto from this perspective, like from the perspective of someone who has to flee a country, people talk about gold and silver, and sure, they're great. But if you're forced to leave Syria with a bunch of gold or silver on you, you're going to have to deal with a lot of threats, like maybe they're going to be confiscated at the border, or maybe they're going to get stolen from you. Whereas if you have a wallet, all you have to do is remember a string of words, and you can essentially take your wealth with you. You don't even.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, okay, so you're saying that storing your wealth in cryptocurrency can help if you are in such a situation, yes, where you don't know what's going to happen one day to the next. And so it's a stable way, a safe place a convenient, practical place to store your wealth. And I thought you were going to say that you have to carry a USB stick, but yeah, you're right. You could have a wallet in the cloud and just memorize certain words. That's correct. So that's even easier. You don't even have to carry that little, USB drive with you.
Yeah, and of course, like, okay, speaking of stable and whatever, of course, this is crypto. We're talking about.
Yeah, maybe that wasn't the right word.
Yeah, of course, we're talking about the early stages of something. So we kind of have to accept the fact that there's volatility involved and whatnot. But if we understand, the core traits that make this asset class desirable, and thanks to which I don't think crypto is going to go anywhere.
Right.
Like, the very fact that you have this practically unconfiscatable asset, it's huge. It's huge. It's revolutionary. Nobody cares who you are, what color your skin is, what language you speak, what your religion is, or whatever. You can invest in Bitcoin. You can invest in, you can get some Ether. It's all up to you. And this is tremendous value. And way too many people from Western countries lose sight of that. And, of course, I would have probably lost sight of that as well, if not for my own experience, if not for knowing how frustrating it can be to be kind of like
yeah.
a black sheep,
So because we have easy access to banking, to PayPal, to opportunities to start a business, we don't think about the benefits maybe necessarily that cryptocurrency could bring, because we have the ability to do the things that cryptocurrency could bring in other ways. Is that what you're saying?
Of course, but even for someone who lives in the United States, crypto isn't necessarily something that's meant to replace the systems that are currently in place. It's just that crypto tends to complement them nicely, So even for someone who has access to PayPal, to Stripe, to all of the various services out there that you can use, and which in certain cases are even better and more scalable than one cryptocurrency or another, fair enough. But the fact that crypto has these qualities that I keep mentioning makes it something that complements existing systems very nicely in developed countries, makes it the only option pretty much in other countries of the world. And for people who keep saying, yeah, Bitcoin is dead, crypto is dead, just look at the prices. Yeah, I don't think so. Like, if you just take a step back and just move a bit away from your bubble and from, your own limited perspective, you're going to see that crypto puts so much on the table for so many people that there's no way we're going to just snap our fingers and it's going to disappear. Yeah, sure. Can the price go up a lot? Of course. Can the price go down a lot? Of course. If you want to be a part of crypto, you have to accept the bad as well. There's no such thing as an asset that can generate astronomical returns, be unconfiscatable, but at the same time never go down in value. I'm sorry. If you know someone who's selling that, I want to buy, but I personally don't. So it's kind of like. It's definitely not going anywhere.
When you were talking about people thinking crypto is dead, it reminded me after the .com crash right after the turn of the millennium, and people were saying that the web is dead, which of course now looks silly, right? That was just a temporary hiccup. But I want to go back to something you said that I thought was interesting so PayPal doesn't want to do business in Romania.
Didn't want to do business. We have PayPal right now.
Okay, so I had a guest from Kenya, and he was talking about similar struggles, and he said that so in Kenya a lot of people don't have addresses, and so that's the reason that PayPal doesn't want to do business with people that don't have addresses. So I thought I had the impression that was pretty much the main requirement. You have to have an address, but presumably you have an address in Romania. So now I'm curious why was PayPal still not kind of hesitant about doing business with Romania?
Well, it has to do with the risk-related calculations that each company makes, realistically speaking. Like, let me tell you something interesting. Coinbase does business with each and every country from the European Union, except Romania. So it's a bit frustrating to me that, Romania still has a bit of a black sheep aura surrounding it, because it just does. And there are reverberations even in the crypto world, with the Coinbase example being eloquent. I mean, it's just downright insulting that they accept all the other countries from the European Union, but not us. But at the end of the day, I don't even care. That's the beauty of having so many options at your disposal. Like, I personally do business. I don't trust any exchange. I don't trust any exchange with a huge amount. And therefore, I choose to do business with approximately 17 different exchanges, handpicked from various jurisdictions with various pros and cons in each case. So I don't care. That's the beauty of it. Having options, being able to say, okay, if you don't want to do business with me, fine, but I'm going to live my life. I'm going to do something with my life, regardless of that. Options. People say, the key is donating to people from poor countries, or of course part of the solution can involve donations, but words cannot begin to describe how much more effective it is to empower people, to give them kind of like the tools, the context, the environment they need to do something with their lives themselves.
I think one of the things I'm guessing, I can't get in the mind of Coinbase, but I'm guessing that they make a judgment call for different countries. Like how attractive it is, how safe it is. And maybe sometimes they're worried about the political stability of the government, right? And maybe that might affect their decision. Like hypothetically, I could imagine, like in Mexico, right? They just elected a hard leftist.
Oh yeah.
Who's gonna, supposedly their people are worried that he's gonna nationalize a lot of private industry. So I could imagine some companies saying, we want to get out of Mexico, and we don't want to do business maybe in Mexico now. So that could impact some private citizens' lives. Whereas with cryptocurrency, that's you don't have to worry about your bank, your business leaving and not providing the service anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what their reasons are. They're a private company. They can do business with whomever they choose to. I'm personally just happy that I have all of these options at my disposal. And again, since Romania is in the European Union, it's not that bad over here. So like we have like a gazillion options when it comes to payments nowadays. So it's pretty okay. But I look at people from, countries with all sorts of political issues like Iran, like Pakistan, and I realize how frustrating it must be to want to be an entrepreneur, to have this fire burning inside you, to want to do something to better your life, to get out of the situation you're in, but see that nobody wants to give you a chance,
Mm-hmm.
Not because you're a bad person, not because you have a track record of doing bad things, but just because you happen to be born in this country or in that one, which kind of sucks,
Right. Like you're in Romania, but you had a talent for explaining economics and people like you. And so the internet gave you the opportunity to share your skills. And it would be tragic if there was somebody in a country right? That people didn't want to do business with, some genius, and they couldn't help the world, right?
I mean, I don't even want to think about how many of those people actually existed. Bright people, ambitious people who wanted to make stuff happen for themselves, for the community, who never got a chance. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the big thing about the internet, and at this point, the big thing about crypto. It gives people an option, kind of like, it's not like Romania gave me all that many brilliant career choices, but when it comes to the internet, if my product is better than other people's product, then they're going to buy from me. They're not going to care what country I'm from. I delivered a superior product, they're going to buy from me. So that was a huge game changer. Crypto takes things kind of to the next level by enabling people from even more countries to participate, to do these things, and it's a transgenerational effect. It's so hard for me to think about where things are going to head and what brilliant ramifications this environment is going to have. Because it's crypto is basically like someone planting a lot of seeds, and of course, common sense tells us that something really awesome is going to grow out of those seeds.
Right. Yeah, this reminds me of a story. I recently saw a lecture by Sal Khan. He has the Khan Academy. It's a famous site with educational videos, and he was sharing stories about like this orphanage in Mongolia, and they were using Khan Academy. It was basically the only education they had. And the most interesting story was a young girl from Afghanistan, and there was the Taliban didn't want her getting an education. So she basically, her whole schooling as a teenager was with Khan Academy, and she had to then sneak into Pakistan to take the SAT. And she ended up, now she's at MIT studying physics with a famous physics professor there. And just think, all that talent would have been wasted if she didn't have something like Khan Academy to give her that education. So that's kind of what you're saying, right? We want to empower these talented people out there.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my conclusion. Like, people are so quick to say negative stuff about crypto that they lose sight of the positives. Because, of course, there are negatives associated with pretty much anything, like the internet itself has roots that have to do with the military, right?
Uh-huh.
That's one thing. Another thing is, what was the number one industry at the beginning of the internet that made it possible for people to make money? It wasn't the most glorious, glamorous industry in the world. It was the adult industry.
Right.
The same way, the very beginnings of Bitcoin are associated with some pretty shady stuff. But this doesn't mean it's not life-changing technology. The fact that the internet had a military background and was used to such a high degree for adult stuff at the beginning didn't change the fact that we now have, Khan Academy, that now practically any person on this planet can have access to the best lectures in the world and kind of teach himself whatever it is he wants to learn free of charge.
Right.
This is what people need to remember, especially nowadays when everyone's focusing on, the price has dropped this much, and look at what's happening over there, look at what's happening over there. When there is this phase of the cycle that involves negativity, people love to talk about the bad stuff, but they can't even begin to realize how many lives are going to be changed for the better by crypto.
Well, that's why it's good to hear from people like you every once in a while to remind us that, to look at the big picture, not just look at the short-term frustrations, right?
Oh, yeah. Crypto is not going anywhere. It exists for all the right reasons, and even with the inherent negatives that we're going to be dealing with from time to time, I think we have all the reasons in the world to be grateful that we live today and that we have access to all of this technology, which would have been not even a dream for people a few generations away.
Right. And when you said about how the web, the internet, initially had a history involving the military and the adult film industry, that there was the bad with the good, it kind of reminded me with cryptocurrency. Some people think it's just all to fund terrorism and money laundering projects, but there's lots of good, right? And people will always find some bad thing to do with technology, but the technology is not good or bad.
Of course, of course. It's kind of like a sharp blade. You know, a doctor can use a sharp blade to save a life. Someone with bad intentions can use a sharp blade to take a life.
Oh, that's
In
a good,
both,
yeah, I like that.
in both cases, the blade is just a blade. You know, it's a tool. It's not good. It's not bad. The same way when it comes to crypto or the internet. Yes, it is true that especially at the beginning, both of them were used for, you know, in some cases even nefarious purposes. But we have this technology today. We are here today. The past is the past. It's on us to kind of take things to the next level. You know, just look at how the percentage of awesomeness went up when it comes to things the internet is used for. And I have every reason to believe that the same thing is going to happen when it comes to crypto, you know?
Right,
So
right.
it's on us. We are here. We have this technology. So let's just for you know, take a few steps back, focus on the positives, and see where we take it from there. You know,
Right. Yeah, that's good. No, and I like I like the angle that you took. You were talking about empowering people in distressed countries, and I think that, you know, entrepreneurship, people taking charge, control of their own lives. I think that that's more sustainable than trying to propose something where the developed world is sending money and they're depending on us, right? I mean, there's charity and people care about people all over the world, but it's nice that they don't have to depend on that. That ultimately they can take the charge of their own lives.
I think so. I think that if we give people a chance to do stuff with their own lives, then we're going to be very, very pleasantly surprised with where they take it.
Right. Good. So, yeah. So I think that's a pretty good overview of how, you know, and reminder of how cryptocurrencies can help the poor. It could enable them to accept payments, to do banking, do entrepreneurship on the web. Is there any other thing you want to mention about that, or have we pretty much covered your vision of how cryptocurrency could help the poor?
Well, frankly, I don't even think we scratched the surface. Fortunately, you know,
Okay.
like there, you know. But at the end of the day, I think a good conclusion for us would be that if you're serious about studying crypto, if you're serious about, you know, making crypto a part of your life in one way or another, even if it's only allocating 0.5 point, you know, 1% of your net worth in this direction, you have to develop the habit of seeing things in an objective manner, you know, because the crypto world is depressingly, you know, it actually is. It should be a textbook case study for manic depressive disorder, you know. And
Right.
if you allow yourself to become involved in this vortex of manic depressive behavior, then it's going to take over your life and nothing good is going to come out of it. If you're serious about preserving what little sanity you have left in the crypto world, I think there's tremendous value in adopting a big picture oriented outlook, understanding that people are going to go crazy on the upside, they're going to go crazy on the downside, but it's on you to be a rational observer, to take a close look at the various pros, some of which we've discussed on this show, to take a look at the cons as well whenever necessary, and ultimately to see things in an objective manner. You know, don't let the craziness of the crypto world get to you, and I think you're going to survive just fine.
Right. Now, you said that we've only scratched the surface of how cryptocurrency can help the poor. Can you just quickly, before we close, share the main other thoughts that we haven't covered that come to your mind?
Okay, that's, you know, the idea of helping the poor is one important dimension. Another dimension is represented, you know, by the various other uses that blockchain undoubtedly has. Now, of course, it doesn't mean, I don't agree with people that say blockchain is going to be the solution to everything. No, but of course, there is the dimension of various other real life uses that blockchain technology has. Then, of course, there are advantages for the developed world. It's a huge privilege to be able to have exposure to this asset class. Of course, depending on your situation. Obviously, if you're a 65-year-old guy who barely uses a phone, then it's not going to be an attractive asset class in your case. But if you're at least reasonably tech savvy, I think you owe it to yourself pretty much to take a look at crypto. So there's this dimension for the developed world. It gives people a good opportunity to hedge against the uncertainty, to hedge against monetary uncertainty, banking uncertainty, to talk about something that has a pretty decent correlation when it comes to crypto. That's another dimension. It's just crazy to think about the various ways in which crypto can change your life. Of course, just like with the .com bubble, there are risks as well. When it comes to technology, and I mentioned this throughout my work, people do tend to get carried away in these manic depressive cycles that I've talked about. Whether we're talking about the .com bubble, whether we're talking about the railway manias, plural, of the 1800s in the United Kingdom. So basically, people tend to go berserk whenever it comes to technology. They tend to get crazy about it. Then they tend to become ultra depressed. And we just have to accept it as something that has to do with human nature. But, to kind of wrap things up, we could talk for maybe 5 hours and we'd still only be scratching the surface when it comes to things crypto can do for you. Like it's not going to solve all of your problems. It's not perfect, but I feel that in the context that we're in right now in the crypto world, with so many people, depressed when it comes to the cryptocurrencies and rushing to call them dead and to say, oh, my 65-year-old uncle was all right all along, it's all a scam or whatever. In this climate, I think that discussions like ours provide quite a bit of value.
Right. Okay. You just gave me an idea also to add on to what you said, which is not only if people have access to the internet, to the web, not only do they have access to cryptocurrency payments, but they have access to all the blockchain smart contract services associated with that. And we could talk about that for hours and hours. Just to share one example, people are making what are called prediction markets, which sound like all it is a gambling smart contract. But somebody pointed out to me, or actually I read it in a book, that you could actually use that, like you were saying, as to hedge, as a form of insurance. If you imagine you're a farmer in a poor country, you could make a crazy bet that's very unlikely, like a weather event is going to wipe out all your crops, and so you could basically bet against yourself, essentially. And if that rare event happens, then of course you're going to collect all that money from winning the bet. But the point is that what I was saying was these prediction markets, these betting basically applications certain developed countries, undeveloped countries could use that as a form of insurance. I thought that was kind of a creative use case that I hadn't thought of. So
and once again, essentially, what's the essence of it all? This gives you options. This right there is perhaps the main value when it comes to crypto. It gives you options. Are they always the best options? No. Should you always use crypto? No, but you have these options. And when it comes to this dimension of our discussion, it just, for you, it would be a tremendous mistake not to see just to which degree crypto can enrich your life. Again, if you're rational about it, if you don't get carried away. But I think this is the main takeaway here. There's no telling how many lives are ultimately going to be changed by crypto, because as you've mentioned, as I've mentioned in my examples, it gives you options.
Right. Now I have to admit, the way that you're talking makes me, even before giving the undeveloped world crypto, it makes me want to make sure that everybody has internet access, right? Because a lot of this is dependent on that. And
yeah, of course, but this is also changing a lot for the better. Like, for example, I probably have much better internet than you do. Like, for example, you get 500 megabytes transfer speed for something like $7 per month. Over here, you get 1 gigabyte. A lot of people are offering it's a basic, because our infrastructure is newer. Like Romania has, strangely enough, I think we're still in the top 10 when it comes to internet speed. So we're getting there. It's sometimes frustrating. It sometimes doesn't happen at the pace I would want it to happen at, but we are getting there when it comes to internet access, when it comes to payment options, you name it.
Okay. Yes, very good. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank you, Andrei, for your encouraging discussion, and best of luck with your channel, 1 Minute Economics. And is there anything else that you want to say before we close?
Well, that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot for having me, guys. It was a pleasure being on, and I'd love to hop on the show again. Maybe we're going to do it 4 weeks or so from now. We're going to talk about the details some more. But yeah, I'd love to be on again.
All right. Okay, great. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Have a great day, guys. Bye.
All right.